Need a hand?
Yes, thank you.
Let's get this wagon fixed.
Together then.
Subscribe to Wild West Soul Stories. Hit the bell, like, comment, and share. Thanks for watching. The afternoon sun hung low over the dusty town of Cedar Hollow, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. The year was 1885, and life moved slowly in this forgotten corner of Wyoming Territory. Folks here minded their own business, worked their land, and helped their neighbors when storms rolled through. Evangeline Harper walked along the main road, her worn boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. She carried a leather satchel filled with tools that clinked softly against her hip. At 24 years old, she had become known throughout 3 counties as the woman who could fix anything: clocks, music boxes, farm equipment, and especially wagons. Her father had taught her everything before he passed away 2 winters ago, leaving her with nothing but his tools and his wisdom. She stopped walking when she noticed it. A wagon sat crooked on the roadside just outside of town, one wheel completely broken, spokes scattered across the ground like fallen soldiers. The horse tied nearby nibbled at sparse grass, patient and unbothered by the situation. Evangeline looked around. Nobody seemed to be attending to this mess. She could have walked past. She could have continued to the general store where she needed to pick up supplies. She could have minded her own business like everyone always told her a young woman ought to do. But that was not who Evangeline Harper was, and it never would be. She set down her satchel and knelt beside the broken wheel. Her practiced eyes assessed the damage quickly. The hub was cracked, 3 spokes were shattered, and the iron rim had bent from whatever impact caused this disaster. Whoever owned this wagon had hit something hard, maybe a deep rut hidden by shadows or a rock buried in the road. She removed her bonnet and hung it on a nearby fence post. Then she rolled up her sleeves and got to work. Inside the small cabin behind the general store, a man named Josiah Cole sat on the edge of a rickety bed, his head in his hands. He had come to Cedar Hollow 3 weeks ago, running from memories that chased him like hungry wolves. His ranch in Montana was gone, sold to pay debts he had inherited from his late brother. His wife of 2 years had left him when the money disappeared, proving that her love had conditions he never knew existed. Josiah was 31 years old and felt like he was 90. He had planned to start fresh here in Wyoming. He would find work, save money, and maybe buy a small piece of land someday. Simple plans for a simple man. But this morning, his wagon had broken down, and with it, something inside him had broken too. That wagon held everything he owned: his tools, his bedroll, his cookware, and a small wooden box containing the only photograph of his parents, both gone now these many years. He had walked to town to find help, but the blacksmith was away for a week. The general store owner had shrugged and suggested he wait. So Josiah had rented this tiny room and collapsed onto the bed, wondering if the universe was telling him to simply give up. Maybe an hour passed, maybe 2. The light changed outside his small window, and finally, Josiah forced himself to stand. He needed to check on his horse at least. The animal had done nothing wrong and deserved water and proper care. He walked back toward where he had left the wagon, his boots heavy with exhaustion and defeat. What he saw when he arrived made him stop completely. A woman knelt beside his wagon, her back to him, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. The broken wheel had been removed and set aside. She was doing something with the hub, her tools catching the dying sunlight as she worked. Josiah approached slowly, unsure whether to speak or simply watch this strange miracle unfold. Evangeline heard footsteps behind her but did not turn around. She had expected someone to appear eventually. She continued fitting the replacement spoke she had carved from a piece of oak she always carried in her satchel for emergencies. The footsteps stopped. She finally looked over her shoulder and found herself meeting the eyes of a man who appeared to be carrying the weight of the entire world on his shoulders. He was tall, broad in the shoulders, with dark hair that needed cutting, and a jaw covered in several days' worth of stubble. but it was his eyes that caught her attention. They were the color of strong coffee, and they held a sadness so deep that Evangeline felt her heart twist unexpectedly. She stood up, wiping her hands on her work apron. She was not a woman who felt nervous around strangers, but something about the way he looked at her made her words catch briefly in her throat. Josiah stared at the woman before him. She was not traditionally beautiful in the way that magazines depicted beauty. Her face was sun-touched with freckles scattered across her nose. Her hair, the color of chestnuts, had escaped its pins and curled around her temples. Her hands were calloused and stained with grease. But her eyes were remarkable, a shade of green that reminded him of spring meadows after rain. She had been fixing his wagon. This complete stranger had stopped her day to repair something that belonged to him, without being asked, without expecting payment, without any reason at all. Something stirred in his chest, something he thought had died months ago. Evangeline spoke first because someone had to. She explained that she had seen the wagon and could not just walk past. She told him the wheel would be ready by morning if he did not mind her working by lantern light. The damage was significant, but not impossible. She had seen worse. Josiah found his voice, though it came out rougher than he intended. He asked her why. Why would she help a stranger? What did she want in return? Evangeline tilted her head, considering his questions. She told him that wanting something in return was not the only reason people helped each other. Sometimes a broken thing just needed fixing, and she had the skills to fix it. That was reason enough for her. Josiah did not know what to say. He had spent recent months surrounded by people who always wanted something, who measured every action by its potential profit. This woman operated on entirely different principles. He introduced himself, giving his name and extending his hand. Evangeline took it, feeling the roughness of his palm, the strength held carefully in check. She gave her name in return, and noticed how he said it back, as though testing how it felt to speak it. The sun continued its descent, and the air grew cooler. Evangeline suggested that Josiah bring a lantern from the general store so she could continue working. He nodded and left, still seeming dazed by the entire situation. When he returned, carrying not only a lantern but also 2 cups of coffee and a wrapped bundle of biscuits from the store, Evangeline smiled. It was the first genuine smile he had seen in weeks, perhaps months, and it warmed places inside him that had grown cold. They talked while she worked. He held the lantern steady and handed her tools when she asked, learning their names as he did so. She told him about her father, the master craftsman who had raised her alone after her mother died in childbirth. He told her about his ranch in Montana, about his brother's debts, about the wife who had walked away when comfort disappeared. He did not know why he told her these things. The words simply came out, drawn by her quiet presence and her steady hands, and her complete lack of judgment. Evangeline listened without interruption. When he finished, the wheel was nearly complete, and the stars had appeared overhead in countless numbers. She set down her tools and looked at him directly. She told him that people showed their true nature when things became difficult. His former wife had shown hers, but he should not let one person's failure become his understanding of all people. Hearts could be rebuilt, just like wheels. It took time and patience and the right materials, but it was possible. Josiah felt something shift in his chest. He asked her if she could do that too, if she could rebuild Ertz, the way she rebuilt wheels. Evangeline held his gaze. She admitted that she had never tried. Her life had been full of fixing things for other people, but she had never let anyone close enough to see what needed fixing in herself. The honesty of her answer struck him deeply. Here was a woman who gave endlessly to others while holding herself separate. And here he was, a man who had been abandoned and now feared connection. They were opposites in method, but alike in their loneliness. He spoke before he could stop himself. He asked her to stay, not just for the wagon, not just for tonight, but to stay and fix his heart too. The words hung between them in the lantern light. Evangeline felt her pulse quicken. This was not a question she had expected, and it was not one she could answer quickly. She told him that heart repairs could not happen overnight. They required trust built slowly, like laying foundation stones one at a time. They required patience and honesty and the willingness to be vulnerable. She asked if he was ready for that kind of work. Josiah nodded. He was tired of running. He was tired of closing himself off. If she was willing to try, he would meet her halfway and then some. Evangeline considered him in the flickering light. She had spent years being useful to everyone else, while keeping her own heart locked away. Maybe it was time to let someone in. Maybe this stranger with the sad eyes and the grateful voice was meant to appear on this road, on this day, at this exact moment. She agreed to stay, but on conditions. They would take things slowly. They would learn each other through honest conversation and shared work. They would not rush toward anything, but would let whatever was growing between them develop naturally, like crops that could not be hurried regardless of how much a farmer might wish otherwise. Josiah accepted these terms gladly. He had nowhere else to be and no desire to run anymore. The next morning, Evangeline finished the wagon wheel. It was stronger than before, reinforced in ways that would prevent future breaks. Josiah watched her work with a sense of wonder that had nothing to do with the wheel itself. He asked if he could help her with her work. She needed an assistant, he reasoned. Someone to carry her tools and hold lanterns and fetch coffee. He would work for whatever wage she thought fair while he figured out his next steps. Evangeline smiled again, that warm smile that made the morning brighter. She told him she could not pay much, but if he was willing to learn, she was willing to teach. And so began their partnership. Days turned into weeks. Josiah discovered that he had a talent for woodworking that he had never explored before. Evangeline discovered that teaching someone else brought new joy to her craft. They traveled together through the surrounding countryside, fixing broken things and leaving satisfied customers behind them. They talked constantly about their pasts, their hopes, their fears. Evangeline told him about the loneliness of being different, of being a woman in a world that wanted her to be quiet and small. Josiah told her about the shame of failure, of feeling like less of a man because his ranch was gone and his wife had left. They helped each other see these experiences differently. She was not different. She was exceptional. He had not failed. He had survived circumstances that would have destroyed weaker people. They rebuilt each other's self-worth as carefully as they rebuilt broken wagons and damaged farm equipment. One evening, about 2 months after their first meeting, they sat together on a hillside overlooking Cedar Hollow. The sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and orange and gold. Josiah took her hand. It was calloused and strong and perfect. He told her that his heart was still under construction, but it was starting to feel whole again. He credited her patience, her kindness, and her willingness to see something worthwhile in a broken man. Evangeline squeezed his hand. She admitted that her own heart was changing too. She had spent so long being alone that she had forgotten what companionship felt like. He had reminded her that fixing things for others was good, but allowing someone to fix things for her was good too. He had fixed things for her without her even realizing. The way he made sure she ate regular meals. The way he took over heavy lifting without making her feel incapable. The way he listened to her thoughts as though they were precious treasures. Josiah turned to face her. The dying light cast shadows across his face, but his eyes were clear and full of emotion. He told her that he was falling in love with her. He had tried not to, had tried to maintain the professional partnership they had agreed upon, but his heart had other plans. Evangeline felt tears prick her eyes. Happy tears, the kind she had not experienced in years. She told him that she had been falling too, from that first moment when he had asked her why she helped strangers. She had recognized something in him, that call, Ed, to something in her. He asked if he could kiss her, asking permission because he respected her completely. She answered by leaning forward and pressing her lips to his. It was a gentle kiss, sweet and full of promise. It tasted like hope and new beginnings and the future they might build together. When they separated, both were smiling. They married in the spring, in a small ceremony attended by the townspeople of Cedar Hollow who had grown to love them both. Evangeline wore a simple dress she had sewn herself. Josiah wore his cleanest shirt and a tie borrowed from the general store owner. They settled in a small house at the edge of town. The workshop beside it became famous throughout the territory. People brought their broken things from miles away, knowing that the Harper Cole team could fix anything. But the greatest repair work they did was never visible to customers. It happened quietly, in the small moments of their daily life. In the way Josiah brought Evangeline wildflowers he picked on his walks. In the way Evangeline rubbed the tension from his shoulders after long days of work. In the way they talked and laughed and faced each challenge as partners. Years passed. Children came. First a daughter who inherited her mother's green eyes, then a son with his father's dark hair. The workshop expanded. Their reputation grew. But what mattered most to them was simple. They had found each other on a dusty road when both were broken. They had chosen to stay and do the slow, patient work of healing together. And they had built something beautiful from the pieces of their separate pains. Every anniversary, Josiah reminded Evangeline of those words he had spoke. "N on that first night, stay and fix my heart too." And every anniversary, Evangeline reminded him of her answer. Hearts could be rebuilt with time, patience, and the right materials. They had proven it together, and they would keep proving it for all the years to come. The end.